Jeanette Wedel, and I'm going to attempt to show you how to make a Kurivi. I know there's a lot of different recipes. Probably every Schweitzer family has their own recipe, but I'm going to do what we do, and hopefully there'll be some hints along the way that you might be able to use when you try to make it. I'm genuine Schweitzer. My dad was a Krabel and my mother was a Schrag, and our ancestors both came over in 1874. So I've tried to learn and all these ethnic dishes. My family has become very fond of them. In fact, at birthday time, if I say, what would you like for your birthday menu? It's usually 1 or 2 German dishes. They're very fond of poppy seed dishes and Wonnebrugge and Käsebrugge, and there are some DVDs that are going to be showing those methods too. So I hope these DVDs are helpful to you, and I'll try to explain as much as I can. Okay, we start out with a sponge, and I'm sure most of you know what a sponge is. And here I've got 2 cups of flour, and I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of yeast. And stir that up a bit. I always use saf yeast, which is an instant yeast. You do not have to soak it. You just mix it in with your flour and add your liquid, and it works perfectly. I don't use any other yeast now. I've been using it for, well, many years. It's a little more forgiving. If you get your dough too hot, you can get it hotter and not destroy it like you can with regular yeast. And it doesn't leave that strong yeasty taste, and I just find it's far superior. We used it at the we had a bakery for 10.5 years, and I used it at the bakery all the time also. I do want to say I'm not a professional, and I've never done something like this before, so forgive me. Okay, and the recipe says 1 3/4 to 2 cups of warm water. Now I start out with 1 3/4, and it's supposed to look like a thick batter, which I will show you. Sometimes it takes a little more. It depends on the flour and the atmosphere. It all makes a difference. So I'll mix this up in here. I don't have a lot of recipes that I use a sponge for, but this one is with a sponge, and I've done it that way all the time. Add a little bit more. It's a little bit too thick. A thick batter wouldn't be quite that stiff, I don't think. So I don't think I've ever used more than 2 cups, but between 1 3/4 and 2 cups till you get a good batter. Okay, you see here, this is what I call a thick batter. So hopefully you'll be able to tell from that a little bit what's happening. Okay, I'm going to put a lid on this, and my helper, who is my daughter Annette, is going to put it in the proofer for me. I have a little warming oven that has a pan of hot water on the bottom, and it has a temperature control. And if you're lucky enough to have one, it really helps in speeding up the process, and I think in the end you probably get a better product also. If you don't have a proofer or a warming oven, you can do it in your regular oven. Just make sure you don't get it too hot, turn it off, put a pan of hot water on the bottom shelf, and you can use it as a proofing oven. Excuse me while I wash my hands. Okay, the next thing we do is we get the mixture that makes the rest of the dough ready to go, and we scald that. So I'll have to get the cream. Okay, this is a cup of cream. A cup of sugar, and 2.5 teaspoons of salt. And a stick of butter. It's a nice rich dough. It is a little slower in rising because it is so heavy and rich, but it makes a wonderful tasting gâteau. Stir this up a bit, and we're going to put it in the microwave. I like to do that. It's a lot easier than watching it on the stove, and you don't have a run over and you don't have scorching. So if you have a microwave, it's a wonderful way to heat this mixture. We want to heat it to about 110 or so. I don't usually measure, but you can. The butter should melt, and test it after about 2 minutes. Okay, while that is scalding, the sponge is in the proofer. That takes about 20 minutes for that to become active, and so until then, we'll talk a little bit more about what all is involved with this dough. I know that our ancestors were very frugal, and with a little bit of, my mom would say, a little bit of flour and a little bit of water and a little bit of butter, the things that they had on their farms all the time, you could make a lot of interesting things. So hopefully earlier, so I could show you the beginning now and show you the ending just a little bit later, so we don't have to have a long process here. This is what the dough looks like. It's pretty, like I say, it's a heavy dough. This is risen. Have you kneaded this down? You need it. It's been kneaded down once. We'll put it back in the proofer and knead it down the second time, and then we will work with it. And then we'll make it into cakes and put them in the pans and get them ready for the oven. As soon as that sponge looks like it's becoming active, we'll add the mixture that we have in the microwave, and we'll add the flour. It takes about 1 3/4 cups of flour. That's, of course, again, it depends on how big your eggs are. It depends on the weather. It just depends on a lot of things. But I start out with a 1 3/4 cup. Sometimes I have to add a little bit, and sometimes I don't have to add it all. But I'll try to help you distinguish what's the best consistency, and that's not always an easy task. This rich dough also has 4 eggs in it, so I'll get that whipped up so it's ready for the mix. It doesn't have to be mixed really, really good. Just kind of whip it up a little bit. The eggs and that mixture, and then the flour is what's added to the dough. And the dough, that's the finished dough. You won't have to add anything else. Let it mix about 10-12 minutes in the mixer. You wouldn't have to use a mixer, but I like to use a mixer. My hands are very tired from years of baking, and it really helps to have a mixer to mix the dough. But it can be done by hand, and there's still a lot of feeling to see about the consistency, but at least you don't have to work so hard at mixing it. How does a sponge look in it?
I have not looked at it.
You want to look at it? It's not bubbly yet?
No.
Okay. Okay, so our sponge is ready. This is how it looks. Real bubbly, and that's what we want. We want the yeast to be activated, and we'll add all these other things to it now. We'll add the mixture of cream, butter, sugar, and salt. And I've got 4 eggs in here that I whipped up a little while ago. So now we'll add this mixture. This is what makes it good and rich and sweet. And then I will add our sponge to this. Got my faithful little scraper here. I'm one of them believes you can't bake without one of these, or 2 or 3. Works in a round bowl very well because it's curved. And you can find those about in any kitchen store, I think. Okay. Now this is all in here. I'm going to put it on the mixer and mix this for a little while, and then we'll slowly add the flour. And I'll try to show you when I think the flour is the right consistency, and that's a real trick. But I'm going to do this a little while, and then I'll slowly add flour. That's a nice warm mixture. I'm going to put what you call the collar on the mixer so I don't get flour over the whole house. There's usually quite a bit of flour all over my house, but sometimes you can do a little bit to prevent some of that. I might also say that I like to use about half and half bread flour and all-purpose flour. I think it makes a little bit better product. I used to only use all-purpose, and you can. But if you have bread flour, you might want to try it with half and half. That works pretty good. This is a cup, pound and 3/4 again. We will use, start out with using most of it. And then we'll mix it. I like to mix it about 12 to 15 minutes. Not at real fast speed, but actually it's the second slowest speed on this mixer. Now we're going to let it mix, and then at the end of the mixing time, I'll come back and show you what it looks like and how I test it for its the stiffness or the texture of the dough. Okay, so this has been mixing about 12 minutes now, and we'll take it off the mixer here, and I'll try to show you how I check to see if I think the consistency is right. You might have another way, and that's fine, but I find that this works well for me. Like I said, everybody does it differently. It's just probably every family has their own way. Now I take the dough and I stick my finger in it and pull it up, and if it sticks around the edge but comes clean in the middle, I call that stiff enough. See how that comes clean in the middle and it's sticky around the edge. You want to have a fairly soft dough. It makes a much better product. Okay, then I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to put this in our proofer, and we will let it rise now and get the dough that I've already mixed, and we'll make the cakes. And bring the other in. Usually get about 5 cakes, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. I weigh them at 1 pound each, so they're fairly even. And I like to bake them in aluminum pie plates. I find that they bake really well in those if you put them on a pan, that is. This is how the dough looks when it's ready to go. I'll get my trusty scale here. And get my pans. I don't like to have them get really, really tall like some people do, and that's okay, but I like mine a little bit less tall, so I only put a pound in. Kind of tricky with such soft dough, but once you've done it a few times, it gets a little bit easier. Okay, I'll flatten these. Push it clear down. I push it clear to the edge. Always grease it with shortening. Never spray it or use anything that's real slick, because this kind of keeps it in shape then with the shortening and not the oil or any kind of spray. Okay. Looks like I'll have about 5, which is about right. Now I know that some of the people who make this make bigger batches. I find that a bigger batch is real hard to get it to bake at exactly the right times, because you can't put very many of these. Well, in a convection oven I can put all 5 in at once, but in a regular oven only 2 go in at once. And when if you have like 10 cakes, it really overproofs by the time the last ones are done. Okay, we're going to have a little one here. It's one for the family to taste as soon as it gets frosted. You want to grease another pan in there? As I said, I'm not a professional. This is not exact, but really doesn't matter in the end, as long as your product tastes okay and looks okay. And you'll make this little baby. You won't have any trouble getting rid of this. Okay. Now, the next, we let this rise probably for about 20 minutes at the most. Stick them in the oven, and I think the recipes, it depends on what kind of oven you're using. They bake for about 20 minutes. And then you cool them, and then you frost them. Now, I'll show you what the end product looks like. This is how they look. Always make a cooked cream frosting, and my family wouldn't have it any other way. That's our favorite. I know other people make different kinds of frosting, but the cooked cream frosting is the old-fashioned way, and that's what I like to do. We make these at holiday time, and I know years ago when they had weddings, they usually had them at their wedding parties. Not the wedding feast, but the wedding party after the wedding feast. I make them at holiday time, and recently we've been able to get different kinds of candy corn. When I make it in fall, either Halloween or Thanksgiving, I use the regular old-fashioned candy corn. And at Christmas time, I use reindeer corn, which is red and green and white. At Valentine's Day, there's also a Valentine corn that, I don't remember what they called that one, but it was pink and red and white. And then at Easter, we use bunny corn. That's different pastel colors, so it's always a fun way to do it. Makes it more interesting. So, if you have any questions, I hope you'll feel free to give us a call or whatever, and if I can help somebody, I'd be happy to do that. So, thank you for watching, and good luck.